The Beatles were splitting, the Beatles were arguing, John and Yoko was getting together, the anti-Vietnam crusades were going on all over, and we were involved in so many things, and we were putting out so much work, and we were making movies, making public appearances, performing at shows and traveling the world and doing all that. There was no time to reflect. There was only time to put out immediate impressions of what was happening. That's why I refer to the word is love on Rubber Soul, straight through to All You Need Is Love, to give peace a chance, to imagine there's no countries, imagine no war, in other words, to write to this moment now. This album doesn't say imagine the whole world like that, because I've said that in a way. What I'm saying now is, now let's put the spotlight on the two of us and show how we're trying to imagine there's no wars, to live that love and peace, rather than sing about it only. Give peace a chance imagine is the same thing. You hit it right in the head. It's just imagine if there were no countries. Not no places where we each had our little spot. But imagine, there was a time, when you didn't have to have a passport to go from country to country. What kind of world did we create? Really, it used to be you could go around, What is this game that you can't get, that somehow this is America and then just across the field is Canada, and that you have to have all kinds of papers and pictures and stamps and passports, and the concept of imagining no countries, imagining no religion, not imagining no God. Although you're entitled to do that too. Imagining no denominations. Imagining that we revere Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Krishna, Milarepa equally. We don't have to worship either one, that we don't have to, but imagine there's no Catholic Protestant, no Jew Christian, that we allow it all, freedom of religion for real, for real.
The discussion turned to the Plastic Ono Band itself. More of a channel for creative expression than an actual band, it was a powerful means for the Lennons to air ideas and concepts into which they had gradually evolved.
This time they're ready for us, man. We can go on and do our stuff without even changing a thing. We could go on right back, and I dug out the old records we'd made. I dug out the B-52s, and then I talked to my assistant who tried to turn me on to them 18 months before, but I said, no, I'm not into the music now. I didn't want to hear anything. He was trying to play me Pretenders and Madness and all that stuff, and I didn't want to listen to it. And I said, give me some more of this. What's going on out there? He brought all this, cookie, whatever you want to call it, stuff in, and we looked at each other and we thought, ha-ha. They finally caught up to what we were trying to do all the time, which is another form of expression. And we thought, this time, surely they're going to understand it. And here we are doing it. Again, it's not that much different from what we did. If you take the Plastic Ono Band albums, which are titleless, I call mine Mother for reference. It had Mother and God and a couple of tracks like that on. And her album, which was a same cover but a kind of reverse trick, the first track on her thing is called Why. You play that, and you play something modern now, and see if we weren't on the right track in 1969 and not. She doesn't like listening. She likes to either do or do something else.
Yeah,
I held her in the chair and said, listen to this rock lobster. Listen to this stuff. But I wouldn't have done it if we hadn't done it together. That was the point which your insecurity makes you say that. But the fact is, if I couldn't have worked with her, I wouldn't have bothered. I wouldn't enjoy just putting an album out by myself, having to do this by myself, having to go to the studio by myself, because I've had the sort of, even though I was in a group, I've had that kind of game before. I didn't want to work with another guy even. The fact of man and wife working together and presenting ourselves as man and wife, not as a sexual object male, or her even separately as a sexual object female that sings love songs and is available to the audience. It's not that. We're presenting ourselves as a couple, and to work with your best friend is a joy. And I don't intend to stop it. If we hadn't had the success we'd had with this record, I would have been quite happy, because I know I can live without it.
The life and times of John Lennon were turbulent indeed. In 1968, his first wife Cynthia filed for divorce, claiming adultery. In 1969, An auto accident involving John Yoko and her daughter Kyoko made headlines, although no one was seriously injured. In 1970, London police closed an exhibition of John Lennon's erotic lithographs on obscenity charges. The charges were soon dropped. And in 1972, John's visa expired, setting off a 4-year battle in the federal courts, during which time he is threatened with deportation. The battle was won on July 27, 1976, when amid much public pressure from fans, fellow artists, and even from New York's Mayor Koch, the judge ruled that John Lennon could apply for U.S. citizenship and remain in the United States. Between 1975 and 1980, Lennon was conspicuously absent from the recording and music scene. His record company, Apple Records, was in trouble and eventually went into receivership to be divided by the courts. The remaining Beatles each stayed in the public eye with record hits. In his first musical effort in nearly 5 years, John Lennon goes into a studio and comes out with Starting Over, a tune which crystallizes his career, his mental outlook on the world, and his rededication to the music he loved.
It's like the channels on the radio were jammed, you know. I was not getting clear signals. And after 10 or 15, almost 20 years of being under contract and having to produce two albums a year in the early days and a single every 3 months, regardless of what the hell else you were doing, or what your family life was like, what your personal life was like, nothing counted. You just had to get those songs out. Now, Paul and I turned out a lot of songs those days, and it was easier because it was the beginning of our, relationship and career. Paul and I developed in public, as it were. We had a little rehearsal in private, but mainly we developed our abilities in public. But then it got to be format and sort of not the pleasure that it was, and that's when I felt that I'd lost myself. Not that I was on purposely being a hypocrite or a phony, but it took something away from what I set out to do. I started out to do rock and roll because I absolutely liked doing it. So that's why I ended up doing a track like Starting Over. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. You know, it's that, you know, it's sort of a la Elvis and that, and I hope people accept it like that. I think it's a serious piece of work, but it's also tongue-in-cheek, you know. I mean, I went right back to my roots. All the time we were doing it, I was calling it Elvis Orbison, you know, and it's not going back to being Beatle John in the 60s, it's being John Lennon, whose life was changed completely by hearing American rock and roll on the radio as a child, and that's the part of me that's coming out again, and that's why I'm enjoying it this time. I'm not trying to compete with my old self or compete with the young new wave kids or anything like that are coming on. I'm not competing with anything. I'm trying to go back and enjoy it as I enjoyed it originally.
Indeed, this evolution is what John described as a continuum of his work, rather than isolated periods such as a Beatle period or a post-Beatle period. It is an artist's objectivity about his work which makes him outstanding, and it is this type of objectivity which makes the Lennons so special as artists and as people.
We're not presenting ourselves as the perfect couple because we don't want to get into that bag either, right? Because we're trying to present what it is, you know, a relationship that lots of other people are having, but they're maybe not songwriters and they don't express it that way. And the letters we're getting back are from couples, apart from the kids who just like it as music. The main excitement is the letters from people who are married with kids, or not necessarily married, but relating together and realizing that we're not selling ourselves as the perfect couple. We have our problems. We've had our problems. No doubt we'll have problems. But, you know, we're trying. We want to stay together. We want to be a family. And that's the kind of level we're relating to. I am not aiming at 16-year-olds. If they can dig it, please dig it. But when I was singing and writing this and working with her, I was visualizing all the people of my age group from the 60s.
That's true.
Being in their 30s and 40s now, just like me, and having wives and children, and having gone through everything together. I'm singing to them. I hope the young kids like it as well, but I'm really talking to the people that grew up with me. I'm saying, here I am now. How are you? How's your relationship going? Did you get through it all? Wasn't the 70s a drag, you know? Here we are. Well, let's try and make the 80s good, you know? Because it's still up to us to make what we can of it. It's not out of our control. I still believe in love. peace. I still believe in positive thinking when I can do it. We all survived Vietnam or Watergate or the tremendous upheaval of the whole world that's changed. We were the hip ones in the 60s, but the world is not like the 60s anymore. The whole map's changed, and we're going into an unknown future, but we're still all here. While there's life, there's hope.
Starting Over was released only 5 weeks before John Lennon's life ended. His outlook was that the world should survive, and that music should enrich the mind, uplift the spirit, and reflect the times in which they were created.
I'm 40. I want to talk to the people my age. I'm happy if the young people like it, and I'm happy if the old people like it. I'm talking to guys and gals that have been through what we went through together. The 60s group that has survived the war, the drugs, the politics, the violence on the street, the whole shebang, that we've survived it, and we're here, and I'm talking to them. And the woman song is to Yoko, but it's to all women. And because my role in society, or any artist or poet's role, is to try and express what we all feel, not to tell people how to feel, not as a preacher, not as a leader, but as a reflection of us all. And it's like, that's the job of the artist in society, they're not some alienated being living on the outskirts of town. It's fine to live on the outskirts of town, but artists must reflect what we all are. That's what it's about, artists, or poets, or whatever you want to call it. And that's what I'm trying to express on behalf of all the men to all the women. Through my own feelings about women, when it dawned on me, my God, it is the other half of the sky, as the late, great Chairman McDougall said, right? I mean, they are the other half of the sky, and without them there is nothing. And without us, there's nothing. There's only the two together. Creates children, creates society. So what's all this BS about, women are this and men are that? We're all human, man. We're all human.
The years John had spent as a husband and father gave him an insight into the plight of women that few men experience. He advocated honesty in relationships between men and women, and detested the macho image that many men adopt as an alternative to communicating with women.
Well, isn't it time we destroyed it? Because where's it got us all these thousands of years? Are we still going to have to be clubbing each other to death? Do I have to arm wrestle you to have a relationship with you as another male? Do I have to seduce her or come on with her, that I'm going to lay her because she's a female, or come on at some sexual... Can we not have a relationship on some other level besides that same old stuff all the time? I mean, it's kid stuff, man. It's really kid stuff. And I don't want to go through life as pretending to be James Dean or Marlon Brando, in a movie, not in real life, even in a movie version of them.